Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to take some pretty dense psychological concepts around emotion regulation and translate them into highly actionable frameworks for executive leadership. Look, if you operate in a high-stakes environment where every decision counts, mastering your cognitive and emotional control isn't just some soft skill, it's actually your ultimate strategic advantage. So, let's dive right into this. Because your time is your most valuable asset, here is our exact roadmap. We'll cover 1. The ROI of emotion regulation. 2. The emotion regulation framework. 3. Reappraisal versus emotional suppression. 4. Managing relationships and anger. 5. The cost of regulatory failure. And finally, 6. Strategies for positive leadership. Let's get you equipped with the tools to optimize your cognitive capability. Section 1. The ROI of emotion regulation. Let's start by looking at the actual return on investment of managing our emotional states when the pressure is really on. Now, this is the fundamental question every single leader has to ask themselves. You see, emotions aren't just random feelings, right? They're highly coordinated responses that automatically prioritize our behavior whenever something important is at stake. When our emotional responses actually match the demands of our circumstances, they serve us remarkably well. But when they're disproportionate, they can completely disrupt our cognitive processes and derail our broader goals. I mean, think about it. A disproportionate reaction to a minor annoying email can literally derail a high-stakes negotiation or fracture your team's alignment. As we can see outlined here, the consequences of emotion regulation really fall into two distinct strategic buckets. On an immediate operational level, it's about capability. Regulating your response in a heated meeting, optimizing your personal performance, and facilitating communication. But on a deeper, macro level, it dictates your long-term executive well-being. Suboptimal regulation doesn't just ruin your afternoon. It's perceived as counterproductive and, over time, leads to severe burnout, poor mental health, and even actual physical, somatic disease. Section 2. The Emotion Regulation Framework. Now let's look at the operational timeline of how an emotion actually unfolds and exactly where you can strategically intervene. What's brilliantly illustrated here in Gross's process model is the entire life cycle of an emotional response. Think of it exactly like risk management. Antecedent-focused strategies act early. That's proactive risk mitigation. Response-focused strategies, on the other hand, happen late, long after the crisis has already begun. Simply put, intervening early in the emotion-generative process yields a completely different and frankly much better profile of consequences than trying to intervene after the emotional train has already left the station. We can break this timeline down into a rapid sequence of 5 distinct intervention points. It kicks off with situation selection, literally choosing to approach or avoid certain environments. If you're locked in, you pivot to situation modification, actually changing the environment itself. If you can't change it, you use attentional deployment, strategically redirecting your focus. Fourth is cognitive change, fundamentally altering how you appraise the event. And finally, at the very end of the line, there's response modulation, managing your final outward reaction. Section 3, Reappraisal versus emotional suppression. With that framework in mind, let's zero in on 2 of the most common strategies leaders use and why one is vastly superior to the other. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding the profound difference between cognitive reappraisal and emotional suppression. Reappraisal happens early. It's about reframing the actual meaning of an event to decrease its emotional impact. It's like interpreting a colleague's blunt tone as a sign they're just rushed, rather than taking it as a personal attack. Suppression, though, happens late. It's merely hiding your reaction, biting your tongue. While suppression might seem professional in the moment, it is incredibly taxing on your cognitive load. The research overwhelmingly shows that early reappraisal leads to much sharper cognitive performance and sustained emotional health. Ultimately, this all boils down to self-efficacy. Executives who possess a strong belief that their emotions can be controlled experience significantly lower depressive symptoms and much less distress. By using tools like reappraisal, they cope far more efficiently with life stressors, they experience more positive emotions, and they report greater overall life satisfaction. Leaders who master this don't just survive stress, they literally use it as leverage to ensure career longevity. Section 4. Managing relationships and anger. Let's see how this translates into managing interpersonal friction. Because, let's face it, business is about people, and people bring conflict. When anger or disappointment flares up within a team dynamic, you need interpersonal effectiveness skills. The most effective leaders approach these situations with absolute clarity. You need to define clear goals for the interaction. You have to ask yourself, what exactly do I want this person to do or say? Identifying your goals before a tough conversation is a lot like setting a strategic destination before a journey. You're just much more likely to actually get there. So what does a genuinely non-defensive response sound like? It sounds exactly like this. Oops, I forgot. I should have asked you this morning to do it because I knew my day would be packed. That's my fault. Let me call them right now. Notice what's happening here. There's a clear acceptance of responsibility, an admission of fault, and an immediate pivot toward a solution. Often our instinct is to reverse blame onto our colleague, right? But regulating that impulse instantly diffuses tension and kills the chance of a hostile, unproductive exchange. Section 5. The cost of regulatory failure. Okay, we have to address the dark side here. What are the systemic breakdowns that occur when executive self-regulation fails entirely? The data shows that failures in self-regulation are the ultimate risk to your executive capital. When your emotional reserves are entirely depleted, even relatively minor negative events can be the tipping point for the onset of severe psychological issues. We aren't just talking about a bad mood here. We're talking about severe depressive disorders characterized by uncontrollable feelings of emptiness, sadness, and pervasive anxiety that completely undermine your ability to lead effectively. In these downward spirals, they're heavily fueled by what we call maladaptive strategies. The absolute worst offender is rumination. Rumination is like running a failed scenario in a simulator endlessly without ever changing the variables. It drains your working memory and solves absolutely nothing. Another massive trap is avoidance, trying to entirely escape internal emotional events or external situations. When leaders rely on rumination and avoidance and fail to use effective reappraisal, they severely compromise critical executive functions like strategic planning. At its most extreme, this profound dysregulation can lead to substance use disorders. In these tragic scenarios, drugs or alcohol are incorrectly utilized as a means to regulate emotion, maybe to artificially boost positive affect or just temporarily blunt a negative state. The devastating reality is that this chronic use eventually causes structural changes in the brain, destroying the prefrontal cortex's natural control pathways and leading to a complete neurological loss of regulatory control. Section 6. Strategies for positive leadership. Okay, let's bring this back to a proactive strategy. How do we safeguard our leadership capability and actively generate positive outcomes? Think of context sensitivity as the Swiss Army knife of executive leadership. It's pure agility. It's not about just having one trick like reappraisal and blindly using it everywhere. It's the capacity to accurately read the room, decode the specific demands of a high-pressure situation, and select the precise tool you need from a diverse repertoire of strategies. It also involves feedback responsiveness, literally monitoring if your strategy is actually working in real time and adjusting on the fly if it isn't. You can also systematically build and upregulate positive emotions. This means using objective affective forecasting, essentially treating your emotional state like a business forecast. Spend time strategically anticipating the positive outcomes of your decisions rather than just acting on impulse. It means deliberately putting yourself in situations that are likely to generate positive returns. And it involves memory building, actively taking steps to remember your past successes and key wins, which research shows directly correlates with increased positive momentum for both you and your team. The overarching aim of all emotion regulation is to keep you progressing toward your goal-directed behaviors. So, I'm going to leave you with this final, critical thought to help evaluate your own frameworks. Look at your daily habits, your immediate reactions in meetings, your strategies for handling stress. What is your ultimate emotion regulatory goal? And are your current strategies actively keeping you on track, or are they the very things distracting you from your strategic destination? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep adopting, and I'll catch you next time.